This is gross.
Jeff Beck, son of a bitch. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
And
So great.
This is a pleasure to have you here. Like, I know that, obviously we do the 6am podcast together, but I wanted to have you on in particular because not only are you my jiu-jitsu instructor, my sensei,
Guilty as charged,
my podcasting partner in crime.
That's right.
But also the designer of most cool things in my life.
That's true.
Wow.
Like, I don't know. I don't think you had anything to do with her. She does this a lot on her own.
Yeah.
But
No. There's some genetics and biology involved in that one, and it wasn't me.
But you were the one I wanted to have you on because we want to officially unveil our official new logo that we have.
There you go.
By the very own Jeff Beck. And dude, like, I can't tell you, man, all the work that I've seen you do, whether it be martial arts, music, skateboarding even. I haven't seen a lot of it. I've heard.
To be fair, yeah.
He tells us he's really good at skateboarding.
I'm the best. I'm amazing.
I can get the board in the air too. You know what I mean? I can get a cool still. Kicking off a board and falling.
Yeah, that's the majority of my skateboarding career right there. I'm like, take a cool picture of this.
Time it right. If you can get the portrait mode and you can get the timing right on the thing. But man, like, I want to tell you first of all how much you've also designed the Baby Mermaid Productions logo.
Yep.
Hold on, I got a whole little slideshow here. I got all of them. You got.
Look at that. Yeah.
You taught me things that about business and design and stuff like that I feel like I haven't even. Entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Well, I want to say thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
And just tell us a little bit how you got started in because officially I try to tell people what it is that you do, but you do so much, it's hard to pinpoint it. So what exactly? How did you get into like graphic design and branding and stuff?
Sure. Well, first, let me just say that it's a pleasure and a joy to work with you, Pat, and I've not a big deal. And I will also say this, that I'm a huge fan of like listening to my favorite designers on podcasts and so forth. But I will warn you that they're typically the most unpopular shows.
Well, that's why. Luckily, you have so much more. I mean, like again, you're a family man. You're an interesting beard enjoyer.
Enthusiast, we'll say, right? A beard enthusiast.
A beard enthusiast. You know what I mean?
You guys don't even know if I have a chin or not, do you?
No, I have yet to see. You showed me I saw an older picture. I think it may have been like a time hop or one of those time things on Facebook, and it was like,
right.
It was an older picture of you, and I'm like, who the fuck is that?
Who's that guy? Yeah.
Guy with the face.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, wow, history. So going like way back into like high school and so forth, I always wanted to be a fine artist. That was my big, it was the one thing that kept me connected to school. I wasn't very good at school. It just wasn't my jam. And, one of the biggest things was, and I'll tell you this story, this should give our listeners some context. And I don't know if it's true today, but at the time I had held the record in my high school for the most consecutive days skipped.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
But here's the thing that most people don't know about that is that during those days, I used to sneak back into school to go to art class. And then I would sneak back out.
Right. And that was the thing was I think I had and this might speak to why we are able to work together so much, because I had the exact same, I had this thing where I didn't skip. We all know my infamous skipping story.
Oh my gosh, does he know?
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you. I've skipped.
I need to know it.
Okay.
I skipped school one time, and it was in middle school. I skipped. This is a super abridged because it felt like a lifetime to me.
Okay.
This was one day. We avoided the bus. We didn't go to the bus stop. We stayed at my buddy's house, which was down the street from the bus stop, until it left. Then we were free. Then we could do anything we wanted. But we hadn't planned anything.
Right.
And we don't have any money.
Right.
And we
so
don't have
do?
a car. We don't have anywhere to go. There's no public transportation in Florida. Like, you can take the bus, but like we just avoided the bus.
Still, you need money.
Right. You still need money. So we're like, okay, well, I guess we can go to my friend's house or this. So basically we just ended up walking around all day. And at some point, I was so nervous about getting caught that I had to take a shit. So
this is a great story. I have one similar to this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had to go. So we were on our way to one of the places, and I was like, I have to do this, but we can't go to anyone's house because all of our parents are home, or this person here. I can't just go to a store because they're like, you can't just shit here. You have to buy something. So they're like, oh, we're in the woods, of course. And we're walking through, and I was like, guys, you got to give me a minute. I got to do this. So being the Boy Scout of this, I took matters into my own hands, and I pulled my britches down, hung over a branch, and proceeded to have a very messy poop.
Yeah.
And, didn't realize till after, when I went to pull my pants back up, that I did most of it onto my pants.
Yep.
So then we spent time taking the most invaluable parts of our backpack, like our homework and things like that, and tried to. I did it. I don't know why I said we. I did it. And I just kind of cleaned stuff off, and got it as best as I could. Turned them inside out.
Yeah.
And then eventually got to a friend's house that had a pool, and then luckily his sister, who was cool, washed my pants. Swam in the pool,
man. And then, you can't go wrong with the cool sister, man. She's gonna wash your drawers, no problem, no questions asked.
And any kind of like, hey, yeah, cool sister. So anyway, how you doing? She's like, yeah, I'm cleaning the shit out of your pants right now. We're not gonna. There's nothing that's gonna happen here. Oh, okay.
And all of your fantasies of the two of you getting together of now, like,
oh, it would never happen again. I forgot her name. I don't even know.
It was important, right?
I mean, at that moment, I forgot her name. I was just like, that's never gonna. So that was, and I never skipped school, but I would go to school specifically to go to art class, music class, and to hang out with my friends. That's it.
Right.
It's the only time I ever went. So
yeah.
So did you ever shit on yourself was that?
No, but we had skipped school. We had a similar story where we were in high school, but and one of my friends had his license and a car before the rest of us. And unfortunately, that day we decided to skip, and he didn't have his car. And we hadn't thought about that when we skipped. And so what we did is we ended up walking several miles to Carlisle. And I went to school at Cumberland Valley. So in Cumberland County, we walked the whole way down to Carlisle to the Sports Emporium, which at the time had the largest arcade. And we spent the day, because the guy that was there was an old guy, like, he starts all the machines up and everything. He gave us like credits all day. He didn't care if we didn't have any money. He's like, just go ahead and play them. There's no one here. It's
really cool.
Yeah. It's like 9:00 in the morning,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we had timed it so that we could walk back in time to get the bus so we can get home. But on the way back, my buddy had to take a shit. And he's like, it's immediate. I have to go now. Well, as it turns out, on the way back, there was one of those RV lots, and they're selling recreational vehicles. Well, the doors were unlocked. Each of them has a bathroom.
I know what you're not supposed to do in those bathrooms.
That's right.
Not supposed to poop.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah,
you're not supposed to do in those bathrooms is poop.
Yeah. So first of all, let me apologize, and second of all, it was great because. But the bad side of the story is that we missed the bus. Like, we didn't have time. No matter how fast we ran, we still missed the bus. Yeah. And that leads to an entirely different story at how I got home. It did involve theft, and
maybe we won't apologize for that one. We'll just wait for the statute of limitations to run out.
Yeah, it worked. It worked. So
you got home. That's all that matters.
We did get home.
So you had most consecutive days skipped. Was that in the yearbook, or was that just like a honorary title?
It was an honorary title. Yeah, you won't find my plaque at the front of the school or anything like that.
Yeah, you were honored. You don't still hold the record.
No, probably not. But anyway, I used to sneak back into class because I had this great art teacher. Her name is Mrs. Dowdy, and she's still alive. I just found out a couple of weeks ago before COVID-19 struck. And I was planning on writing her a letter or trying to go to see her because I wanted to let her know that I made it, that I did. I made a living as an artist. And she was one, she really pushed me to do great work and to keep going and believed in me. And then she also said, I think you might like graphic design. And at the time I had no idea what graphic design was. And I was like, okay, so I started looking at schools, that were surrounding graphic design, and I had a fine arts portfolio. So, painting primarily was my medium. I loved oils and acrylics and so forth. and had accumulated some like in high school terms, some prestige in terms of artwork.
Yeah.
And awards and things like that. And of course, like growing up, the whole thing is, my parents were like, oh, he's going to be a starving artist, but anyway, I also had a girlfriend at the time, and she was going to go to school in York, Pennsylvania. And so that's ended up what dictated what school I went to. And I got into Bradley Academy for the Visual Arts, which was in downtown York on Philadelphia Street in this like dingy old building. In fact, our very first day at Bradley, they found a body in the basement well of the church right next to our our building. So
natural causes, like what happened?
No, I don't think so. I think they were suspicious. How about that?
They were skipping school.
Yeah, somebody was skipping school, and so anyway. But I got into Bradley with a fine arts portfolio, and as it turns out, they were really kind of like, oh, you're going to pay us money, cool. Like I don't give a shit what's in your portfolio. And there I learned how to be a graphic designer. I thought I was going to be an illustrator, like I was good because that was as closely, close to what I knew how to do. And then I met real illustrators, and I was like, oh shit, like what am I going to do? These guys are amazing. Yeah. I can't illustrate my way out of a wet paper bag. And so I learned about graphic design. And I think the best thing that happened to me is that one of my very best friends in the entire world, who's still one of my very best friends in the entire world, by the name of James Hobbs, was the guy that I was closest to, and he was amazing. He was amazing at graphic design. He understood the concepts before any of us. Yeah. And so he like really rubbed off on me on like how to do this stuff. The funny thing is at the end, when we graduated, we had our senior show and our portfolios. The shittiest thing about this is that my portfolio had to sit right next to his. And so people would come up and look at mine, and they'd say something like, oh, well, sure is the year for broken type, isn't it, Mr. Beck? And I'm like, yeah, because I was like trying to be cool. And then they'd go to James, and they're like, do you want a job?
Yeah, I love that, because there's a level of like, I love the fact that you knew at least, I mean, that's not that early, like super early. High school is a good time, I feel like, to kind of to decide like what you want to do. I was
not really though.
But I do love the fact that when you do either realize it or anything, like when you do notice like, oh wow, like you were saying, you wanted to contact that your teacher and say like you have no idea, but like you had this effect on me. Like we talked about it on the last episode we did with Manny, where I had a friend of mine that had the same thing. A friend, the friend that I skipped school with. Yep. That we hid in his house. Actually, his mom was the first person ever to like suggest that I should be a comedian.
Okay.
And I was like, and her name's Tina. I know her name. I know like where she lived, at least for a while. I don't know a ton about her, but I've been trying to reach out to her to say like, hey, like I'm doing comedy.
I'm doing it. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that kind of thing. But realizing like what you want to do, even at an earlier age, even as a youth, like whatever it may be, like high school, middle school, or anything like that, and actually pursuing it and completing it, not completing it, but fulfilling that want or that need, it makes it feel so much more special. Like I just realized yesterday that I had been watching MMA, like UFC, stuff like that, for like 15 years. I had started watching around the first Ultimate Fighter. I started around that time, like a little bit before, like the pay-per-view before or something, and then got really into it when I realized how accessible it was. And then I told that to my buddy, or I told that to Muskin last night when we were watching the fights. Yep. And this morning I saw a post that said it was John Jones and Kamaru Usman, both championships in their divisions, talking after and saying, man, can you believe it? There was a story that they were at a house party in 2005 and watched their first MMA fight together. Like they had never seen it. Yeah. Watched their first fight together, and now 15 years later, they're both champions. Right. Now, if you want to talk about the better use of your fucking time, well, I started watching MMA the same year John Jones did. Yeah. And so far, I just know a little bit more about it now.
You guys, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, though, Pat, on that. And that's really like what my career has been about my use of time, right? And And I think that it's something that I treasure my time, where I spend it and what I spend it doing it. But the truth of the matter is that for folks like us who work in a creative field, and let me be clear about this. I think people in general are very creative. I think that unfortunately for most of us, we're taught out of it. We're told that we can't do this, we can't do that. I can't draw, blah, 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 blah. I'm not creative. I can't tell you how many times I get on the phone with a new client and the first thing they say is, I'm not creative, and I really want them to think otherwise because, for my work, it's a collaboration. My objective as a designer, as a graphic designer, and I focus on branding and identity, is to give you your values back to you visually. And most of the stuff that like I say, about my work is things that I've picked up from other designers who I admire and so forth. And I just want to keep propagating those messages so that people understand that, like, you are very creative. If you weren't creative, I couldn't do my best work because it's not fine art. I'm not creating work for myself. I'm creating work for you.
Yeah, you are getting inspired. You are an artist. Like, I think a true artist gets inspired by art. And I think what you're saying there is, like, you see some value. Like, when I started doing jiu-jitsu at Harrisburg Jiu-Jitsu and started going to 6 a.m. classes, found out you guys had a podcast, found out you did all that stuff. Like, it was that way. It was that exact thing that you're talking about, where I was like, man, you guys are doing great, but, like, I love this message. Let me help you. Let me help do this, or let me do that, because it was automatically inspired. And I feel like those have been the most fulfilling projects for me anytime. Like, I have gotten more fulfillment out of doing free, like, just hours and hours and hours of editing or recording or anything.
Well, that's how you know this is what you're meant to do and want to do. If you're willing to do it for free, then this is the right thing for you. And so I've realized lately, because I feel like I'm a creative person, but I'm like, I can't, like, create art. But I've been listening to different podcasts and stuff, and creativity, problem solving is creative. Like, like, people automatically think creative, they think art, and that's it. But there's way more, there's other aspects to it. And that's something that I've realized for myself. And everybody needs a creative outlet, and whatever that is. Like, it could be problem solving, it could be designing something,
cooking.
I'm watching what is it called? Babies, I think is what it's called, on Netflix. And it's just about, like, the development from, like, pregnancy all the way through.
Like, wait, what are we watching?
And I'm watching, not you. And now I lost my train.
Sorry, no, you were watching Babies.
We're talking about the process of creativity, like
so all of the experts that are doctors, every single one of them started out in a creative outlet, whether it was literature, whether it was actual art. And then when they got into college, it branched off into other things. And they're like, language. That was one of the things that was into music and melodies. And then for whatever happened, they were like, oh, I realized that language is kind of, it has a rhythm to it, and there's a musicality to it.
Yes.
And they started researching babies, and that's how babies learn language, is the rhythm and how the words go together. And it was just like, it was so crazy. And these are all doctors from around the world. And the one thing they had in common was they all went into school in a arts way, and then it morphed into something else. And that's why I say, like, with high school, like, I feel like high school should say, these are your strengths, and here are all the possibilities for you.
Sure.
And then go to college, and then you figure it out.
Right. I mean, everything is an experiment, right? I mean, the idea is that, and I think that was beautifully said, Dominic. This is the stuff that I geek out on, and nobody asks me about these things. So, like, to be on this podcast and have this conversation, you can ask my wife. I can go on for hours.
This is
hours.
This might be a two-parter, baby.
I think that is really true. I mean, like, there are particular disciplines. Mine happens to be graphic design. It's the one the medium that I work under, but conceptually, like, the idea is that, number one, I just like making shit. I like making things. It makes me feel fulfilled and complete to do that. And I would do it, and I do it, even if I'm not getting paid to do it. And it's like something that drives me. And again, it makes me feel it's almost like, it would be like if I didn't do it, I would feel depressed. I would feel, and I think that those are the steps that lead to having a very unfulfilling life. And for people who just kind of give up, they're like, one of the things that just me personally, I'm really big on being legit, right? So I try not to talk shit. Like if I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And this is a great field to do that in, because I get to learn about all kinds of different, perspectives and businesses and models of thinking. And it's like, so I don't have to be an expert in it. I get to ask all the questions, which informs the work. You know what I mean? So for me, it's great.
Getting a free lesson. It's like having one of those things of like, it's almost like like you can treat your career almost like even like a community college, where you have this like grab bag of like, oh, I want to help this farmer rebrand, and now I'm going to learn everything I can about farming while I'm doing this because it genuinely fucking interests me. And that's
it's crazy.
Doing that, if people are working with things that they are generally interested in, then like that's the thing is
people need to be more curious.
That was a problem. That was a conflict I had growing up a lot of times, and I know that we grew up in a lot of probably closer to the same circles as far as like
the culture.
So, like punk music, going to shows and stuff like that. And I always had a weird thing with like the fact that people wanted to be doctors to make money. Right. And I was like, don't you want to, like, because there are genuinely people that are just interested in how the body works, and they have the ability or the learning discipline to really like utilize that interest. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's
about utilizing your interest.
And that's what Dom was talking about just a moment ago. We'll find that, like, I'm sure there are a whole host of medical professionals, physicians, and likewise surgeons and so forth that did it for the money. And my guess is they're probably not that fucking good at it.
Yeah.
But these people that see that there's a connective thread in art, and that it's like, this is just part of the stream of life, and understand that from that perspective, are probably really good. Yeah. And it's like what drives them and motivates them. Now they probably most readily wouldn't say, oh, what I do is an art, but I would argue otherwise.
Right. And that's
much an art.
Point. Yeah. And that's the thing is, that's what I feel like you like. Once you're somebody that can have those disciplines or work in a couple of let's say just more traditional art fields like graphic design or painting or something like that. That's one thing that I've always wanted to do. I want to learn how to be a painter. Like I want to paint, but it's like the fact that I haven't done it yet speaks to me of saying like, it'll happen when you're ready, or it'll happen when you're, it's things, but
or it won't, like it won't be.
Or won't,
yeah.
But the thing is you have those more artistic outlets or anything like that. I forgot where I was going with that.
Sorry.
But you can still have like I feel like stuff, you see the art. Yes. That's where it was. Like you see the art in like parenting. You see the art in conversation. You see the art in getting the train back on the tracks for your podcast. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
When you lose your place, you figure out how to fill. Like you figure out, like you were saying, that everything can be seen in that artistic lens. And I really do enjoy the fact that I really do wish, like you said, more people would have, even if you try an art or
I think people would be happier. Like if they found
I do too.
They could do creatively, again, whatever that looks like for you, you'll find more happiness and that balance. I think it's important to have that balance.
So do you remember the first time that you actually made money with like your art, like whether it be a band or like actual art?
Yeah, I mean, I did a couple. I used to be really good at airbrushing, guys.
Oh yeah. I wish I had a friend that died recently. You could make me a shirt.
So the funny thing is like when I went to school, the computer was a thing in our field, but it wasn't hugely popular. And so like my graduating class was the last class to do traditional board mechanicals. We did everything by hand. So, typesetting and, board mechanicals for pre-press, and we illustrated things with airbrushes and pen and ink, and it was a nightmare, not least of which because I'm terrible at it, which again, speaking to him again about my buddy James, he could do that. He was meticulous. He was very clean, neat, and accurate. Everything was just crisp and beautiful. And mine was a fucking mess,
because that's the thing. Cause you're like, oh, he has the patience. He loves doing
this.
Yeah,
he loves all of it.
And you're like, I'm fucking over this.
Done. But airbrushing I was really good at. And so I actually had a couple, I was growing up like in the punk rock community. First of all, let me speak to that just real quick.
Absolutely.
And the punk rock community taught me that like you didn't have to be the best player. You didn't have to be the best singer. You just had to have the guts to go and try. Right. And that's one of the things I found was most beautiful about it is I had friends that were in bands and they weren't good singers or had great songs, but in context to the time, it was the best. It was they were the greatest singers, the greatest guitar players, the greatest drummers, the greatest music. If I listened to it today, I would say, okay, I mean, I can understand you would be critical of it, but at that time, and that is what art is. Art, especially design. Design is of the moment, right? That's where it lives. It's not designed to be. I mean, in some cases, you could make the argument that it lasts forever, but it doesn't. Nothing lasts forever.
Right.
Not even the cold November rain. but so anyway, did I ever, one of the first time I made money is I had a buddy that I worked with at a warehouse, and he had a band and he wanted to know if I would airbrush t-shirts for him. And I said, sure, not realizing what I was getting myself into, which was like almost, it started off at like 25 shirts and it ended up being 115 shirts. Wow. And I airbrushed every single one of those for his band. And I got paid like $100.
How long did that take?
That's
you?
almost $1.
A long time.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it took a long time. It took weeks. And because if I screwed it up, then I had to go do another one. And when you factored in time, materials, and all that stuff, I mean, I basically paid them to do their shirts for them.
Yeah.
But they were cool.
I feel like that a lot of times is, I think that's how maybe I'll not justify it, but like how I was able to, because I think a lot of it too, and I think what you're speaking to about like just going up on stage or just doing it or just going for it kind of is the aspect of you, like, I feel like you're like, I paid you to do it, but also when I did that math of like, oh, that's almost $1 a shirt. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever. I started doing that math when I started doing comedy.
Yeah.
Where I was like, somebody would give me
$20.
I would say $100. When I first made $100, I was like, I just did like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, and I was just like, how much does that factor out to? Because to that point, I was like, I make $7 an hour. I make $10 an hour. Like that's how when I got to $13 an hour, I was like, fuck yeah, I make $13 an hour. But I hated my life. I hated my work life.
Yes.
Right.
I would come home and I would just lament to her about how much I fucking hated my job.
I would tell him, just quit.
Yeah, but I was just like,
quit. Yep.
But my thing, I thought I was a success because I was making the most money I've ever made.
Right.
But once you're able to flip it and you're actual to see from a different perspective and go like, holy shit, I just made $20 an hour. Yep. Or like $100 an hour. If I do an hour and I get $150 or whatever it may be.
20 minutes because I remember like the first time which we have framed, I think you got $20 and I can't remember how many minutes you did, but like it was like $7 a minute.
Yeah.
And it was like when you think about it like that, that's insane. Right. Nobody makes that much money.
So yeah, you know what I mean? Like so like
but they do.
They're usually doctors or lawyers. Like stuff like that is it's hard to like dictate it to be the person because like you said, like and I know I've had this conversation with you a bunch because like I said, you have taught me so much about branding or knowing your own value or whatever it may be as far as trying to run your own business or starting your own business, but is knowing your value, is saying that. But like it's so hard to say like I would do this. Yeah. But it's hard to turn it into a job because a lot of times you may get a client that's like, hey, I want to do this. And you're like, I don't care.
Right.
Like, but you have to like find the value in it and realize that. But I love the fact that I can get a project and be really excited about it and just go, and they'll say like, well, how much do you want for it? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, do you know what I mean? Like And then you say a number. I think that's the thing too, is realizing the first time you tell somebody a number and they're like, oh, okay, sounds good. And you're like, that's way too much. I would do that for like one that, you know?
So, guys, listen, this is the kooky thing about it. And that is, there's a couple of things that are in play, and it's what's the mystery behind all this. Number one is, it's generally speaking, it's never as much as you think it is, right? You're like, to you, and this is again, these are just lessons that I've learned about running your own business, especially small businesses. It's easy to grow and be big. And the more you do that, the more money you have to make, the more likely you are to become the whore of your clients, right? Because you have to take work in order to pay bills and all that stuff. It's much harder to stay small and disciplined in terms of like your work output and what you say no to. And I'm guilty of this as well. I'm terrible about saying no. But to speaking to like how much, like where you value and like all this other stuff, you say it's going to cost this much money. You're like, I've never made that kind of money before in my life. And then they're like, yeah, it's okay. Like, there's no problem. We got it through whatever corporate or whatever. Yeah. And you're like, are you people insane? But they're not buying. They're not just buying the product, like the end product. They're buying the entire process, like the experience. Like, remember that you have value as a creative person. You influence and change like the entire trajectory of a particular venue, or, for me, it's my clients and their business model, how they think, how they look at things, just through one project. So it's not about building an identity. It's about creating an opportunity to look at the world from a new perspective. And that perspective happens to be mine.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll tell you, like, I've had clients that have hired me to consult just to teach them how to communicate with one another from one department to another creatively. Wow. Who the fuck does that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's cool that you offer that.
I mean, I didn't know I offered it until they asked me. And I said, sure, of course I will. And, honestly, it turned out to be one of the more difficult projects for me. So, I mean, in the end, the money was, they paid for it. And I gave them that amount of time, effort, and energy because it freaked me out, and so, but the truth of the matter is that, like, that stuff exists and people are willing to pay for it, because as much as you would like to think that everybody thinks like you and acts like you, they don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot more people out there that just do the job because it pays bills, or it's what they were supposed to do, or it's because it's what their parents wanted them to do. And they got caught up in it. And then before long, they were making so much money that they couldn't leave it for fear of ruining their their futures. And you know how this stuff goes, guys. You start your career, you start working, you make like your first promotion, you start making a little bit more, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you buy a car, you have debt, like you have all this stuff that you have to manage. And you're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to break out. And then in your 40s, you have an affair, you buy a sports car, you get caught jerking off in public. I don't know, like, weird shit like that happens. And like your whole world collapses, because at no point did you ever stop and say, oh, I could have just put the brakes on and done what I wanted to do, right? What would make me happy? Because making money is definite. Like it is not the main mission, but it is of a priority. I have to make money to provide for my family.
Right.
But making money is a byproduct of doing great work.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the point is you have that, like you said, like no matter what, you're going to have to make the money, but it's about, I feel like, because we had that same thing is realizing we were headed on that path. You know what I mean? Like, sure. I was working at a job that I was making good money, that we were doing this, but we had a lot of status things, whether it be like, oh, we have tickets to the hockey game, we have this, we have this. But like a lot of those things is it's just shifting your priorities. Is shifting that. And it's not changing everything, but
for me it was like, that's what my parents had like set up. This is what success is.
Yeah. Sure.
But that wasn't, my parents didn't know me well enough to know, like, I'm not good at school. That's not like, doesn't mean I'm not smart, but like that's not where I'm headed.
Yeah.
And instead of embracing my strengths and saying like, you're a creative person, you're whatever, and help me like form my own path, they stuck me in this box, and then I felt like a failure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not success. Well, in my eyes, for what they pictured success for me was, I'm not successful. My mom religion. Mm-hmm. And I was like, nope, I do not want any part of this.
Sure.
And I'm a bad person because I'm not religious. And then my dad was like, you need to go to school and be a doctor. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't do well in school. Like,
right.
That is so much schooling, and I don't want to do it.
And there's something about that. There's something about that. There's nothing wrong with motivating your kids, like to say, like, try this.
No, definitely.
But like to give them that, like, here's the reality is like, you have to understand that there isn't the same reality for every single person.
No.
And when you have that kind of that mentality of, like for the longest time, I thought I was the kind of dumb that was, you know, he's too dumb for school or whatever, you know, like he should be in the lower class. But now in my 30s, realizing, holy shit, no, I was one of the guys that wasn't being challenged. Right. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? You know what I
mean? The system let you down, man.
Yeah. Not only did it not, was it not effective, where they're like, you're supposed to figure out a way, you're supposed to teach me how I'm supposed to learn.
Yeah.
Sure.
And not only that, but you not doing this, you're also giving you whether it be self-esteem or anything like that. The fake it till you make it thing is so much harder for me because my work ethic is almost ingrained in shame. You know what I mean? This thing of like, you don't want to be shamed. You want to do a good job. You want to make people happy. You want to make other people happy. And until my 30s,
don't
realize,
rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat.
His mom is very much like, don't rock the boat.
And it's one of those things of like, that is the worst thing to tell an artist is to say like, well, you don't want to do this.
And especially someone like you that always pushes the boundaries.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, but like it's...
No, yeah.
Okay, maybe sometimes.
I did say that we should feed service dogs to homeless people. There's
weird. Your one emotion is anger, so I guess you kind of balance that.
Yeah.
2 dogs, one truck. It's
but it's a problem that solves itself.
Hey, you know, 2 birds, 1 stone. You know, I know that's just a food truck idea. I think that there is a healthy home for that feeling. Like there's a healthy root to that tree to say like, you should be a doctor. You should, because you want them to be something that maybe you weren't able to do, but switch your perspective and go like, oh, wait a minute. There was things that I wasn't able to do. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like, so it just sucks that sometimes, and I think that artistic thing is where you get that. You realize, oh shit, I can paint here. Oh, I can paint here. I can do anything. Like, oh, wait a minute. It's my choice. And
well, that's the thing. I wish they, like in high school, and we went to school in Florida, everyone. So we're, you know, right off the gate, it
basically
wasn't a
adult
good thing.
Daycare.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's so bad. But I really wish, like, as I got older, I was like, I didn't know half of these jobs existed. It's always very like teacher, lawyer, doctor, police officer, like at all kinds of different stuff. And
if you suck at all of it, you join the military.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they tell you, yeah, you were supposed to be a recon guy. You're like, is that what I'm good at? Like when you're basing your thing on other people telling you what you're good at, then you're going to be like, well, oh shit. Then am I not good at these other things? It doesn't mean that. It just means that.
Right. Well, when my dad joined the Navy, he didn't know what job he wanted to do. And they said, well, you got a D in chemistry. You'd make a great corpsman. He's like, okay, I'll be a corpsman. But yeah. It's important to know that, like, you know, and these are things you figure out. And I agree. It would be great if we had more role models from an adult perspective, providing that to our children. And that is, if you are not happy with yourself, how do you expect to make other people happy?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a fundamental, like, that's fundamental. And it goes, and that applies not only to your career and your work, but like your family, excuse me, your wife and husband, your children. If you yourself are not happy and feel satisfied and fulfilled, how the fuck do you expect to make other people feel that way?
Right. Yep. Yeah. And that's what is it RuPaul says? How the hell are you supposed to love yourself? Or no, what?
How the hell are you supposed to love somebody else? Oh.
If you don't love yourself, how the hell are you supposed to love somebody else?
There you go.
Yeah. Like, yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's a truism, right? I mean, and it's fundamental to life. So, I mean, if you're always measuring, and it's one of the things, it's one of the components of my work that I really appreciate is finding the emotional core of whatever I'm working on, because it gives you an opportunity to measure all of your work again. So I say, this is the emotional core of the work. This is the big idea, the big concept. and then you can always measure it. And the same thing is said about like your life. So if your number one goal is to be happy and feel fulfilled, you can guess, or have a more educated guess about, if I do this thing, will it make me feel more fulfilled or happy? Like, in what way does it benefit me? Even if I fail, then it's going to teach me something important for me to progress.
No matter what you're going to learn, no matter what.
Right.
And don't give up. I think that's something that, Pat and I have been trying to work out Gross Domesticated podcast for years. I mean, you've been doing this for so long, and then I came on and just trying to find it. And then my thing is like, just don't give up. If you don't give up, it's going to be a success. It may take you 5, 10, 15 years, but all of the lessons you're going to learn are going to make you successful.
Right.
That's right.
Make it worthwhile.
That's right.
And one of the things that we have battled is a logo.
Yeah.
So the Gross Domesticated one, his good friend did when it was just Pat. When
by the way,
had that.
Funny, the complete coincidence, by the way, the last person to design a logo for us, it's his birthday today.
Oh, it is.
Happy birthday. Beef. He's my best friend from Florida. He's my best friend. I've known him since like 9th grade, even before, I think 9th grade. And like, and he designed it. It was the original one. It was a certain, actually, I might be able to find it. Hold on. Go ahead.
But it was GDP. But then we got some feedback that people thought it was a political podcast.
Right.
One, it was red, white, and blue. And then it was, I don't remember what the GDP stands for.
Gross Domesticated.
No, I know that.
No. It's the Gross Domesticated product.
Yeah. That's what GDP is. Yeah.
But this is the Gross Domesticated.
Okay.
Podcast.
So people were like, they weren't interested because we were like, we think this is a really good podcast. Why are we not getting listeners? And then he changed it. And then the latest one we had was like the red background with the yellow font. And I was like, now this looks like the China's flag. I was like, we went from like this political thing to this political thing.
This was better dead than red, I say.
Yeah.
See, that's a good, it's a nice mark. I mean,
it was good. And it was beautiful for starting out. It looks great. But then people were like, is this a political podcast? So then that was our thing for a while. I was like, this is not a political podcast.
It's just a pun. It's a pun.
So,
we're being punny. You assholes.
So this was when he said that you were going to design a logo for us. I was so excited. And I feel like now we're getting, like, we've started to have a really good rhythm of
we have
recording.
our idea. We have our identity now.
Yes, we found our identity, and it feels so good, and it feels like we have a direction.
Right.
And so you were talking about, looking when you're doing designing. So what went through, what was your thoughts with coming up with this design for us?
Sure. And it's funny, like these are the things. So these are the things that bring me the greatest joy, like that there is some sort of like that connection that makes you guys, this is my job. My job is to say, look, I want you, every time that you put this out into the world, it makes you feel like you're putting yourself out in the world, right? Like this is us. And so really, like for me, this one was easy because, I have a close relationship with Pat. He's one of my students. Excuse me, guys. He's one of my students in jiu-jitsu. But more importantly, is we started working together from a podcasting standpoint. And he did that, and just for all of our listeners, Pat volunteered to come in and help with the 6 a.m. podcast. Didn't have any expectations, didn't ask for anything, just really wanted to do the work. And that was huge for me. And I just, he and I share a similar background and all these other things. And so getting to know him and working with him in a professional setting outside of the gym and everything, I was like, I started listening to you guys' podcasts and the work that you guys were putting out. And I was like, this is really good shit. And so for the Gross Domesticated podcast, for the identity, for me, it just came together pretty simple. First of all, both of you, most of the time, Dom, you're not wearing glasses today, but you're often wearing glasses. and like Pat, when I look at Pat, like those are his glasses. I mean, so every time I see him, like that's him, right? So it sort of started there. And then the typography, I'm a self-professed typophile. I love typography. I love the way that it works. I love the way, like, there's an artistry behind making typography, which I do not do, but I take advantage of all the great designers that do make typography.
So typography is that like
fonts?
Okay. I was gonna say, yeah. I was like, that's what I wanted to, but I wasn't. Yeah. I didn't want to like just discredit it or just be like, so you mean like fonts or?
Yeah, no, yeah, like fonts.
We're talking about designing a font.
Yes.
Oh yeah, there's like there are specific artists that create fonts, and they create type families, and there's like, I mean, there's all, again, this would have to be another podcast for another day. but I love it, and so like for me, like when I explained it to Pat, like one of the things for me is when I broke that type, like it sort of reminded me of like the cadence of the show and the content of the show. Like I always tell Pat that he's broken, and yes. in all the best ways. Like I think it's great, and so and then I have it like blending together. So because it's just sort of like one topic always like leads to another, and it's like this. How do I put it? It's almost like they just sort of meld into some sort of cohesive.
Like a stream of consciousness. Like
it's organized chaos.
Yeah,
is the way I see it.
Yeah.
I used to try to say when I would try to explain people the podcast, because Gross Domesticated podcast originally started out, it was me. She would be on every once in a while. Like obviously she was available, but I didn't think that she was necessarily that into it. But we always have great conversations, whether they're on or off mic. And I was just like, so eventually at some point I would say, whenever you want, you can be on. And then eventually said, like, why don't you just be the co-host?
Right.
So,
right.
And eventually, but every time I explain the show, and it's funny that you put it the way you did, I would always say it's like drowning in a sea of consciousness, like, or a stream of consciousness. Like it's literally, we start it's a conversation that is loosely interview based, but basically it's just a general interest. What do I think? When I think of, like, obviously I know you, and I know that we always have great conversations. So there's very little that I have to do necessarily to like prepare, because I already know what I want to know about you.
Sure.
And that when again, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, realizing when you do, like, that can be an art form. That's a type of performing or artistry or whatever it may be, to say, like, I know how to steer a conversation. You don't realize that until somebody compliments you on it.
Yeah.
Or says something like that, or I realize this about the show and go, like, that's a conscious effort. I did that on purpose to try to make it something besides, there isn't really a theme, so it's hard to make a logo for it. But then when you have a different perspective, or another artist saying, viewing your art and saying, like, oh, you're the topic. The topic is like this, your podcast, this is your podcast, the structure of it. And to hear what even went into that, like that, it's truly, it's a cool feeling to say, like, oh, it is working. Like somebody does notice it. Somebody is seeing that, or seeing that things like, I got these glasses specifically so people would say, hey, there's that glasses guy.
And I unfortunately had to stop wearing my glasses. But with the face mask, I can't, like, and I'm wearing the face mask all day long, and there's just constant fogging. So I have kind of gotten away from, I'm wearing my contacts way more.
But
I do still wear glasses.
I'm sorry. What I'll say is this personally is, I think, my favorite of the ones.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this goes beyond just I think we discussed this a little bit, but I think you had more in mind a little bit for this thing, as far as the overall branding of us.
Well, what it does is, so like once you get past the cool part, like where you're like, aha, like this is the idea and this is how the fun part, that comes the work part, where you have to create an identity that can actually function in context of what you're doing. So I actually have to build the work. I have to design the pieces so that they function in a digital platform. They function in a print platform. They function, if somebody just happens to look at it, that they recognize it as you. And so along with that comes a whole host of things. So a lot of times, especially in terms of logos, And here, let's be honest, kids, like design is subjective. So some people will like it and be like, yes, that's it. And some people won't. But the more that you guys believe in your work, the more they're like, yes, this is good and I like it, right? But if you just throw it out, and this is what happens to a lot of designers when they create work, especially logos, are like, it sits on the corner of a page of a letterhead and it's done. No, it has to live. It has to be able to grow with you guys as you change, so that like if there are later adaptions, that it all sort of makes sense and flows together, versus, in 5 years, you're like, we have to redesign this thing because it's outdated.
Yeah.
So really, like what you're looking at, it was Pat, as you're like scrolling those things in the background, is like you're looking at different iterations of the logo, including like the hero mark, which is what we're looking at here, and the lockups with the typography. So how does it work with the glasses? Like these are all like part of the identity in its whole, right? And so in each of those should be able to live on their own in different contexts and to still be associated with the Gross Domesticated podcast.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's perfectly said, because and for me, like I'm not a performer. So like me putting myself out and like talking and doing a podcast takes a lot for me. Like,
sure.
Because I don't have the confidence that he does. And so I have to go out of my comfort zone. But something like this gives me the confidence, and it like makes me proud, and like, look at what we're doing. And, and having you put so much thought and effort into it, it just makes me feel even better. And it makes me feel even more proud. And I'm really excited to see how much further we're going to grow just for help with this.
That's awesome.
I love it.
It adds legitimacy to a thing that we already love. So it was like
that was already legit.
And that's the thing of like, we always knew how good it was, and it's good to see it. I think that's the exact way to put it. It's like it's seeing a visual representation of how we are viewed, at least by somebody that we respect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Sure,
thank you.
Sure.
And that's the thing is like and again, go to I put your name at the bottom here. That's your title on Instagram. Think Invictus.
Yes, I update that at least once a year.
What your
my Instagram account. At least once a year, I'll update my Facebook page and Instagram and my website. So,
but you have this thing where it literally. I mean, this is a level of, and that's why that's part of the reason. Not only because we have great conversations, but that's part of the reason we wanted to have you on here, is because I don't know how many. Like if you were to have, because that's the thing is, I feel like what I've learned from getting into like podcasting and comedy and stuff like that is people have their strengths. Everybody nowadays is kind of expected to do everything. You're supposed to be kind of an audio tech, kind of a video tech, kind of know video and audio editing and this, and that, blah, blah, blah. But we realize after a while that we all have strengths. I don't have the artistic muscle, at least as far as design. And it's clear. And it's clear because I've attempted it so many fucking times and I don't even like it.
But how frustrating.
And I'm just like, why am I putting this out here? I might as well go to somebody.
Right. Like always outsource. Like outsource whatever you can.
Friends. Yeah.
Because how frustrating is that of like you wanting to do this and then not feeling successful, and then that gives that weighs on your self-confidence, and then other things suffer. So just outsource anything that you can do.
And I agree.
And ask somebody, ask the person that you know is better than you at the thing.
That's right.
Because not only will that be an acknowledgement of like a compliment, because that's the thing is
you're giving somebody else more confidence.
And not that you're an intimidate. Like I wasn't like scared but I was a little nervous, a little hesitant, because I respect you and your work, and I want to make sure that you're like, you're putting yourself out there. You're saying, hey, I have this thing that I really like, and I'd like you to be involved, even if you're the first thing that everybody sees. Like they're listening to us, but they're seeing your work.
Mm-hmm.
But your work, you're using your talents to put us up. You know what I mean? Like to raise our again, like I said, legitimacy, and you're showing people the visual representation of the podcast, and you nailed it. And you fucking nailed it. That's what I'm
thanks,
saying.
man. Is
the thought I just don't believe that there's a ton of artists that put that much consideration into it. Maybe thought and artistic ability, and to where
right.
I was like, that looks cool. That's fucking cool. Like, my thought wasn't like, I love it. I think it looks cool. But my thing was, that's it, exactly it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
right.
once you see it, you know it. And I think, honestly, you do that for everything. Like, you design for 6 a.m. podcast, your own podcast, yep. Some clients that I've seen that you've done work with.
Sure.
It's one of those things of like, once you
do
know
what you
it,
love, it's it's great.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And I can't say this enough that you guys are right on the money when it comes to like outsourcing things, because the truth of the matter is like any knucklehead with a computer can learn how to do graphic design. I mean, the thing about it is that there's no mystery behind it. It's just practice, but like, who has the time for that? Like, you can teach me how to plug a microphone in and record a voice for a podcast, and how you can teach me how to engineer. You can teach me all the things that you've done. But now we're looking at like 10, 12, 15 years before I get to the point where you guys are at. Right. And I'm, and this marks, guys, this will be going on I'm in my 24th year of professional work. Wow. So, I mean, yeah. So I know you can do it. And that's the beauty of it, right? The beauty of it is that you know that you can do it. So that means we relate already. Like, you could look at that work and do that work, right? You could copy it right now if you wanted to, and you'd get it pretty close, right, to what it was. But like, to get to that point, you had to hire somebody to do it. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do. Like, what I want to do is I want to give you this work, and then now you can take it and you can make things with it. Right. You guys can make whatever you want out of it. You know?
And that's the thing is you have this, like you said, like, you get this thing and you say, like, all right, this is yours now. Like, here's your logo, here's your everything. And I will say that the color and everything is a little bit, I had to adjust it for the TV.
This TV is an old TV.
That's my thing with I feel like your work all the time is like, I always, like, I'm the guy, I think you even said it, I can't remember, I think it might've been one of the projects that we were working on together, and you were like, hey, what is this? This looks like shit. What are you like, what did you do? And I was like, I don't know how to resize it. I was all like smushed and stuff. And I was like, you're like, use this one, idiot. And I was like, oh. But it's one of those things of like, I always go like, oh, I don't want to make you look bad. But like, this is a thing where like, I think this, you nailed it. And I will say to anybody that's listening right now, if you have any design ideas, if you're frustrated about like, oh, I wanted to do this thing, or whatever it may be, just contact a professional. And I would suggest, obviously, Invictus.
For sure. Yeah, sure.
And not just because he's my buddy, but because, like, it makes your life so much fucking easier, and you get to focus on the things that you're really good at to make the thing that you're making that much better. And that's what it should be. A rising tide raises all ships.
I literally was like in my head, like, was it say this? Because that's exactly right.
That has been one of
said.
That's been one of the things that a mindset or a thought that has been so beneficial to me, not just personally but professionally, in the sense of like to me, and I want to let this know that anybody out there that doesn't like me or doesn't like the podcast, I don't fucking care. I don't want you to like me or like the podcast. I want the people that are seeking this kind of content. And that's the thing, is consistency, quality, and everything, what it may be. This is not the only change. We're trying to work on our consistency and having this, and this is just motivation to do that, to make ourselves more legitimate and more to rise our stock, to raise our stock, to rise people around us, to raise people.
Well, the goal would be that we could do this full time.
Yeah. Yes.
Like that, like that's the goal.
And that was the point that I was trying to get to with that, was you're the person that taught me about God jobs.
Yep.
And I feel like that's
a God job.
Well, I got that from, I had a mentor for a number of years by the name of James Victori. And James Victori is a world-renowned designer. His work is in museums all over the world, and he is a kooky guy, and a great dude, and a great designer. And he's now focused a lot more on teaching and mentoring and so forth. And I had the opportunity to do that with him for a number of years. And one of his things was that there are God jobs with lowercase g, and then there's everything else. And the God job, like you start every project off as though it was going to be the greatest job that you ever worked on, and you put that energy into it, and pretty quickly you'll figure out if it's going to be a God job or not. Sometimes it's just a job you got to get done to get the bills fucking paid, right? So you get it, and you take that as an opportunity to learn about like how to get closer to that God job, and the things that you've got to experience and learn throughout that process is beneficial as well. But more importantly is that you got paid.
Yes.
So get paid and get out of there and start focusing. Not everything's an experiment, and I wish that every project I worked on was as glorious and as much fun as say the Gross Domesticated podcast, and it's just not. And sometimes I just don't jive with the people I'm working with, and I'll be the first one to say, like, I don't think we're a good fit. It started off good, and then things got muddled, or something went wrong, or I'm not understanding it. I'm a human being too. Yeah. And if you want me to just regurgitate, like if you're like, well, here's my idea for a design, just do this, you can find somebody else much cheaper to do that, right? There's lots of great professional designers that'll make your shit look good and are very proficient on the computer, but that's not me.
Yeah.
So if we're not a good fit, that's okay. So there you go. That's the definition. The God job is like doing the Gross Domesticated podcast project, right? The God job is being asked to consult on how to teach grown-ups how to communicate creatively. This stuff, like, and it happens, the more you do it, the more frequently it happens, but it doesn't happen all the time, right? There's still the days that you have to design. I have to fix a form for one of my clients so that people, but that's not a God job, but it's a super important one, right? So I have a lot of clients. I work primarily in the nonprofit sphere. It has been my focus for my business since I started it. And several of my clients work in the medical field. And so designing forms is something that I have to fucking do. Nobody wants to say, I want to design a form, but if it helps their patients, understand the process, or makes communication clearer, or it creates an environment in which they feel better, then it was totally worth it, right? It's not going in my portfolio. I don't need to show you all the forms I've designed, right? But
yeah, I will say I'm a person that does appreciate those things. When I do notice, like, when a thing is easier to, I go like, man, whoever made this is like nailed it. Or like, you know what I mean? Like, I am somebody that, so like, I think there is just that mindset with people that are like, I could do this better. I can do this.
Right. And it's changing that mindset. So like, form is boring, but if you have it with like, okay, the intention, the idea
this is going to be the coolest fucking form ever.
This is going to help people in this way.
Yeah.
So that is my North Star, that like every time I get frustrated and be like, okay, the reason why I'm doing this is for this, but it's necessary to do. But then it also makes you appreciate those God jobs so much more. You're like, oh, I love this.
When I still had the day job, I incorporated the word comedy into almost every one of my passwords.
Yeah.
So it would remind me every time I go to clock in, every time I go to do this, I do that. Like, why am I doing this? And it was because, like, it's comedy. Don't forget, this isn't your job. Comedy's your job. Remember?
Yep.
Yep. And this is helping you be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. And so it's one of those things of building those little motivators or anything like that, I think can help you. And like you said, going into it with a mindset is important. It's so important to have that.
What kind of mind?
Set.
No.
What?
Wise mind.
Yeah, sure. Wise mind.
Yeah.
I'm in
your
wise
mind.
So.
Yeah.
Good. Me too. Look, we could have a whole nother podcast about therapy and how important that is.
Yes.
Talk therapy, especially. I am a big fan of it, big proponent of talk therapy.
This is a fun thing that we do, and we're gonna add more stuff. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna try to do a lot more streams with the show going forward. We're gonna start doing a lot more interactive things.
I found a murder mystery box that you can have shipped in. I was like, we should stream that, and we'll do it.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of like really cool, fun things, and honestly, we took a little vacation. And like a literal vacation, and then came back and we've been retooling the show to to I think this is its final, not its final form by any means.
No, because who knows what it'll
but this
grow
is
into.
It's so exciting to see, and you've given us that road to be able to go down. And I just want to thank you again.
Yeah, thank
if
you.
Anybody,
absolutely.
If you have a design, if you have a form you need designed,
you got something real boring you need done, I'm your guy.
We may have to collab on interview questions for me. Like, how do we have interview questions?
Yeah.
My job.
Sure.
What made me think with the forms of like, how do I make this easier for communication? I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea.
But we will.
Yeah. This is a fun thing that we incorporated a little bit ago. That's definitely sticking with the show. This is the only book that I allow in my house. I hate books in every way, but it's if double ellipses. And it's basically just a book of what if questions that we like to pick the coordinating episode number. So this is 129. So
okay.
Each 129, and we got a couple questions.
Okay.
For you.
So if you could visit only one more place in the world that you've never been, where would you go for this final voyage?
So a place that I've never been.
Yep. That
where would I
only visit? Okay, so if you could visit only one more place in the world,
like you got
so
one
like
more trip.
Maybe you got, I don't know, cancer, and they're like, okay, you're done in 6 months.
Right.
She's on a dark cloud to this question. I was thinking like a bucket list maybe, and just
but if you only have one more place you could go, or maybe the world's ending. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Pick your scenario. But if you can only travel to one more, let's just hypothetically say there's a global pandemic that has shut down international travel, hypothetically.
Sure.
If you were able to visit one more place before they did that, where would it be?
Okay, and it has to be a place I haven't visited before.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Have you done a lot of traveling?
Not a lot. I mean, I've done a decent amount of traveling, thankfully.
Yeah.
And so my mind starts racing of all the places that I'd want to go.
I feel like I would mine would have to be like space.
I mean, space is a great one. I mean, I think it would get old after about, after a day or so. You're gonna be like, okay, let's get the fuck out of here.
I know, man. I think if I brought enough mushrooms with me, I think I might.
I mean, there could be
mushrooms in space, mushrooms on the moon. That's my place. That's my final place I would ever visit.
I really, really, really want to go to Alaska.
Oh, I would love to go to Alaska.
Actually, you still can. That's
great.
Yeah, officially, I saw a map of where Americans were allowed to go right now, and you can still go to Alaska. There's still time, bud.
So where in Alaska, like
the wildernessy part, or like
I want to see all of it. I just think Alaska is a beautiful place, and I'm a huge fan of like the mountains. I'm a huge fan of but see, that's not even entirely true either. I love urban communities too. I love all of it. I think it's great. Right. I've had the pleasure of being able to do a lot of those things here throughout my adult life, and every time I go. I should mention that I am not a very good traveler. Like my wife has made me very good at taking vacations, which I've been terrible about, and actually shutting my brain off and work and like actually going to see these places. And, now every time I go, I'm so excited because everything's pretty much new to me. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like the Pacific Northwest. I just went for the first time a couple of years ago, and I'd been to California before when I was a kid. But like, I don't, whatever. But the Pacific Northwest, I fell in love with it. It's amazing. And I've been to Arizona, and I loved Arizona. And I went to South Dakota for a client meeting for work. And I was like, everybody shits on South Dakota. I think it's awesome. I went to Italy. Italy was, amazing. Like, this is like,
I love going places where my phone doesn't work, because within a couple of days, or within even like a couple of tries, like I'll try to refresh something or do something, and I'm like, my brain's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right.
We were just in Michigan, and my phone did not work. I didn't have my phone on me.
We didn't even know what time it was most of the day.
I was like, when I'm home, my phone is glued to my hand. Like I just have like this anxiety that something's going to happen at work and I'm not going to be available. And then what are they going to do without me?
Yes.
But going on vacation, I was just like, I don't even know where my phone is. Is it even charged? I haven't charged it in 2 days. Like this.
Yeah. It's really comforting to know that you're not that important. This is exactly what this is the lesson I learned.
That's ego.
Yeah.
Like that's my ego being like, my store can't handle it without me.
And that's
right.
That's something that I learned early on, and it's something that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast about just saying, I don't know. It's like that's an important thing to be able to say.
Oh yeah.
Is to say I don't know.
But I'll look into it. Yeah.
But I'll look into it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like is that ego death of saying like anytime I would get mad about something, this is how I changed my perspective of thinking so negatively about everything all the time was like I would get mad about something and then I would just stop and I would picture where I am. Then I would like zoom out, and then you realize, nobody in the whole entire unit. There's people on the next block that never know that you've ever existed.
Yeah,
that's right.
Like those things of like, you don't mean anything. This means nothing. Just keep going. Yeah. Just like, you know what I mean? It's the finish line. That's what's important, not necessarily. And
well, it's the journey.
It's the journey.
Exactly. It's the journey. It is.
It's about shutting your brain off when you're able to do those things. And it's so much easier when you have the assistance of like isolation or something like that. Like Alaska would be one of those things that like you realize like that's a place that's a bucket list place for us.
Well, and before I answer the question, what was the show that we watched on Netflix about Alaska?
Surviving Alaska?
Yes,
or something
you
like
have to watch the show. I
told him about it because the guy looks like him. He looks like a mountain guy.
But it was a part of Alaska that for when I picture Alaska, I always picture snow. Like covered in snow, and this was like the wilderness in the woods and on a mountain. But you should watch that show; it's really, really good.
Awesome, yeah. This is the second recommendation I've gotten from your family.
So where I would love to go is Greece.
Ooh,
and I want to stay and like that's on the beach or in like on the
Galapagos
mountain. Yeah. But when it's in the like you walk right from your bed, you can go into a pool that overlooks. Oh my gosh, like the green and the white.
The warming suite.
Yes. Yeah, like that. I would absolutely love to go. I would love to go there.
Well, I will tell you this, Dom, that like I've had the pleasure of doing that in Italy, which is very similar, of course, especially in terms of region and atmosphere and the aesthetics of it. And it's totally worth it. You should do it.
Yeah.
100%.
We should plan a family trip. We should have a dual family trip to the Pacific Northwest. We'll go to Alaska. We'll go to Portland. We'll go to
I've never been to the West Coast, but the Pacific
Vancouver.
Northwest,
that's a place. I want to see some orcas, man.
Yeah.
Whales. Yeah. I feel like orcas are going to be our number one enemy, and I've had this theory. This is another weird theory. Because once global warming happens, then they have the lay of the land.
Yeah,
then they're our number one predator.
Those ice caps melt, and then the water rises.
Yeah, that's right.
Underwater.
We're done for. But what was the other question?
If you could have anyone locked in a room so that you could torment them for a
question?
day, who would you choose and how would you torment them?
Oh my gosh.
I think this might be
evil questions.
This might be evidence one day. I mean, there's questions in here that we've avoided that has been like, if you could drop a nuclear bomb on any country, what would it be? And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, why would you do
Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be like
I would annoy, sadistic. Like it would be like,
it could be, it doesn't have to be like
probably like my brother or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, it would definitely be my kids, and I'd take all of them and I'd put them in a room, and I would not stop talking for at least 5 hours. I would just talk and talk and talk, and when I ran out of words, I would just start singing and humming because that's what they do, you know. And they'll be like, "I'm going insane," and I'm like, I know.
That is the point of this.
For me, it would be our cats, and it would just be every time they start to fall asleep, I'd wake them up. Wake them up.
Oh,
and they start to fall asleep. Wake them up.
The first thing that came to my mind, it was Donald Trump. Like for real, I would love to lock him in a room and then just try to destroy his ego.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Force feed him mushrooms. Feed him mushrooms until he
just be
stops.
Can you you are a psychopath. Such a psychopath. I just want to break you down.
Yeah.
Build you back up.
Just to at least to realize what you're what you look like to everyone else. Yeah. I said, just feed him enough mushrooms to show him a mirror to scare him.
Yeah, ayahuasca or something, and we'll have him have a shaman.
Yeah, you would have to have something else with it, because I hate to say it, but he's somebody that is narcissistic. He has a narcissistic personality, and there's probably narcissistic personality disorder, but I'm not a clinician. I can't doctor.
Not here to
diagnose. Right. But I will tell you that like I've run into people like this before in my lifetime, and I've had to actually do some serious research about like how to handle them or deal with them. And the reality is that you can't. There's nothing you can do about it, because there's nothing you can say or do that will make them understand. Mm-hmm. They suffer from a disorder. Like they don't make the connection that, you're a piece of shit. They're like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It's like whether like that's you, because somebody can have like Tourette's and you can be like, hey man, stop cursing in front of my kid. Like you can, like there are things where like you a disorder.
What?
No,
that's it won't work.
A disorder can make you seem like a bad person, but it's not where, like you can make like, so like you're a piece of shit, but it's okay because we have this thing and we can work past it.
Right.
So let's just figure out how you can deal, because we all realize when I realize everyone in the world is a hypocrite.
True.
Once you realize that, you're like, oh, okay. Because no matter what, you're going to be in traffic. Someone's going to cut you off. You're going to be like, fucking piece of shit. And then you're going to do it two minutes later because you're like, I got to get over. Every single person in the world is a hypocrite. And if you just look at it like that and just go like, try to be better.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Some people, like you said, don't see that because there may be a disorder. And what do they need? Drugs. I think we're agreed on that.
Drugs. Okay. Yes. Agreed.
I'm with you. I think I'm going to switch my answer to that. Because honestly, I'll be like, one for you, one for me, one for you.
We're going to have, it's going to be one and then two, because
I got to get out of here.
That's end up being reversed and you end up tormenting yourself. You're like, oh no, I did this to myself.
Jeff, man, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
We have to have you
Absolutely, guys. It was a great pleasure, and I will leave you guys with this. And this is another Victoriaism. James Victoria told me this, and I think it's really, really relevant and important for everybody who listens to this podcast. Everybody who worries about like their imposter syndrome, their concern of whether they're creative, whether they're doing the right thing, how they're going to manage, how they're going to make money, how they're going to be a great business owner or leader, whatever you're doing, right? It goes for everything in the world. Great parents, great husbands and wives, all this. And that is, nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just making it up as we go.
100%. Yeah. That is exactly how we end this.
Yeah, that's perfect, man.
That is perfect.
Tell people again where they can contact you for any work, any forms that they need.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can like, again, none of my stuff is updated. Like I say, I update it like once a year. I'll probably should do it here soon, but you can find me on the web at Think Invictus. Invictus is the name of my company, thinkinvictus.com. You can find me on Facebook at Think Invictus or on Instagram at Think Invictus.
At PG Comedian for me, wife_George for her. And again, man, thank you so much. We love you, buddy.
We love
you too, guys.